Thank you, Kieran. Well, morning, everyone. It's such an honour to be here today. It really is. I feel quite emotional because it really is an honour to be here. When Mitty dropped me a message asking me to do the message, it was the day of the anniversary of my brother's passing on the 10th of August. And there's a whole story behind all of that as to why I came into this movement and started coming to these services and developed my relationship with God. And I'm going to share that with you today. I have a lot to say, and there's no clock. so I'm going to apologise before I even begin and make sure that I keep some check on time. So I want to also say hello to all those people out there online too. And there is quite a few people here today. And I'm really, really happy to say hello to everyone that's tuned in. All my brothers and sisters. Thank you. Okay. My title, Returning Back to Love and My Relationship with God Following 40 Years in the Wilderness. I really thought long and hard about what I was going to share, and this really is my story of my return back to God. But I'm going to start with when I was a child. I remember always kind of having a mind of my own, and my mum kind of noticed that. And there was an advert on TV way back when I was very young, and these children were interviewed, and I think there was about 5 children. And so they went to the one child and they says, "What would you like to be when you grow up?" And the child says, "I want to be an astronaut." And then the next child was interviewed, and they said, "I want to be a pilot." And then the next person was interviewed, and there were really interesting jobs that they wanted to do. And then there was this little girl right at the end, and the interviewer said, "And what would you like to be?" And the little girl goes, "And I want to be a proper little madam." And my mum said, "That's you." Because I was a proper little madam. And I'm sure when my mum hears this, she will laugh, because I was very different, and I had my own mind and what I wanted to do. And at age 5, I had 3 other siblings, 3 brothers, and they were all very young. And I felt that I just wanted to experience something different, something more. And I remember stomping and stamping my feet and saying to my mum, "I want to go to church. Take me to church." And I really wound her up about it to such a point that she said, okay, I'm going to take you. So she took me to church, begrudgingly, because I didn't shut up. I didn't stop. I said, "I want to go to church." And I felt home. I felt, at 5 years old, I just felt like this was right for me to be here. And it was wonderful. And I felt like I'd found, I don't know, the word wasn't there then, but my tribe, my family. I found a place that I felt comfortable. And my mum turned around to me and she said, "Well, I can't take you every week. You know, I've got three young babies to look after," you know. And she managed to find a very good friend of hers who took her son every week. And she said, "Do you mind looking after my daughter too? Because she's winding me up and she really wants to come every week." And gleefully, her friend said yes. And therein lies my journey. I did my journey on my own, without my family, but with other people's families, because it felt right for me. And this story of me doing things outside of my normal family thing was to haunt me and to take me through my journey. I was actually really devoted to the church between 5 and 15. I went to church 3 times on a Sunday. I sang in the choir. I joined the choir. I was at choir practice. I joined the church youth club, and my whole life revolved around the church. And in fact, such a point that my mum was quite worried that I was going to join a convent. She said, "I think I've lost my daughter to the church." And she was very concerned. for many years that I wasn't going to have what she considered a normal life for her daughter. But something changed. Something dramatic changed. When I was 13, I was considered an elder in the choir and an elder in the church. And in that change of age came responsibility. And not responsibility that I felt comfortable in taking on. And that responsibility was to be confirmed. I went to a Church of England, so it's an Anglican church, and as much as I grew up in the stories and collected my stamps and did all the right things and really lived in a very Christian way, I kind of took everything very seriously. And so when they asked me to get confirmed, I asked questions because I was a bit of a questioner, and I still am. And the question was, well, what does it mean to be confirmed? I don't understand. Tell me, educate me, because I want to do this right, because it's important. And so I kept asking friends. And the answer I got was, you just have to they ask you 3 promises. You just say yes, 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 and then you'll get your bread and wine. I thought, well, that doesn't feel right. That just doesn't work for me. So then I asked more people, because a lot of my friends were older than me in church, and they just, kind of just went along with the flow and followed as everybody else did. And I don't have a judgment in that. It was just that for me, I was a very literal girl, and I probably still am in a lot of ways, even today. And I wanted to understand before I said yes, 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 and got the bread and wine. I wanted to be sure about what I was saying yes to. So I asked one of the elders, one of the very mature ladies who taught Sunday school, and she sat me down and she says, my dear, yes, you're very wise to ask. And she gave me a little bit of an understanding that was more than I'd had from other people. She said, what you have to do is you go through some education, some teaching, some learning, and then at the end of that, you take 3 promises. I says, oh, well, that's more than I got before, so tell me, what do I need to promise? She said, the first promise is to let Jesus into your heart. I said, well, that's easy. He's in my heart. I can do that. I don't have to worry about that. And then she said, the second promise is to listen to everything he tells you. Immediately, I was frightened, because I said, say if I don't hear him. Say if I'm busy with my headset on, listening to my music. Say if I'm playing with friends and I miss what he's saying to me. And then she said, the third promise is that you do everything he tells you to do. And I thought, if I don't hear what he's saying, how can I do everything he tells me to do? Oh my gosh, I'm not ready. And I remember really getting quite distraught about it, to such a point that I turned round to the vicar and said, I'm not ready, I'm sorry, I can't do this yet. I'm too young. And it's one of my catchphrases, I'm too young to do this, give me more time. And he said, but you're not too young. You're an elder. You have a responsibility. And I said, well, let me study more. Let me, think about this and let me feel comfortable, because I want to do this properly, because it's important. And so from age 13 to 15, I was on this journey of wanting to understand more, wanting to make sure I made the right decision, and actually take my confirmation seriously enough that I held back from doing it. And at 14, the vicar said, you're no longer welcome in the choir, because you're not setting an example. And as much, I think back, it was very heart-wrenching, because I'd been in church from 5 to 14 at that point, and it was very difficult to kind of almost be ostracised because I wasn't ready. And it was difficult, but I left the choir because he asked me to, so I did. And then I sat at the back of the church with my friends, because I couldn't give up the church, because that was my life. And then he saw me during the social time, the fellowship time, where the tea and coffee and biscuits were served. And he said, "Caroline, you're not welcome here anymore." I want to backtrack a little bit, because before he did these things, he visited my family. He visited my mum and my dad before I came home from school. And he had a long chat with them, and then I walked in from school and I said, "What are you doing here? How come you're here?" Because you see, my mum and dad hadn't really followed me in my church career, let's say. And even though that was very important to me, they were accepting that that was good for me, but they didn't come with me. They just said, "That's your thing." And so when I saw him, I said, "Well, why are you here?" And he said, "Well, I'm here to talk some sense, to get your parents to talk some sense into you." And I said, "Right." Feeling a bit embarrassed at that point, because I knew what was going to come next. And my mum said, "He seems to think that we have some control and some hold over you going to church. But I've told him squarely that church is nothing to do with us. That's your thing. And we don't tell you to go. You decide to go because you have your own mind. And actually, we're pleased that you're making some other decisions and thinking about it." And I looked at the vicar and I said, "I can't believe you're here. You know, why have you come here? This is my work and my choice, and my parents will never be able to persuade me whatever to do. And I'm really taking this very seriously." And so serious was I that then the onslaught of "you're not welcome here," to the point that it was very, very difficult to go to church without having, it's very hard to say because it was so long ago, but you know, it still hurts, the looks of disdain, the looks of "you're doing wrong, you know, this is not okay." But I still felt in my heart that I wasn't ready. And so I felt that it was important to be true to myself, to speak my truth, rather than to follow and just take the promises by saying yes, yes, yes. A lot of my friends in church just says, "Oh, Caroline, you're being too serious, you know, just say yes, 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 and be done with it." And they gave me some real talkings to, and I just said, "No, I can't, it's too important. It's far too important to me." So reluctantly, I left the church at 15, which was my life. I left church, the youth club, I left the choir. And then I kind of said, well, now what? Now what do I fill my time with? So at 15, there was the mock exams at school. And I threw myself into my exams, school and education. And I landed up at college. And then I landed up being one of the youngest managers at 21, qualified trade managers. And it was amazing. But there was still something that was inside that wasn't there. There was still something missing. And what I did was I just kept going through my career and my study and my training, and I became known as the career portfolio girl. And I did well. I ticked all the boxes and I did all the education at 27. I found that I was at the top of my game in terms of, the positions that I'd reached. And I took careers advice and they said, you have to go to university and get the paper qualification that gets you into the higher levels of management, because you've got all the experience now and now you need to get the bigger qualification. So I said, okay. So at 27 I went to university. And that was tough because I was back in study again. But it was fun and I had a new purpose. And then I graduated off my postgrad in marketing and I was at the top of my game again. But there was still something missing. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but there was. And I kept looking and searching and I kept going along life and ticking all the boxes, good old corporate girl, doing everything that I was supposed to do. But still, there was something not quite right, and I couldn't work it out. And then in 2000, my father passed away. I just got married. And that was very difficult, and I was very successful in corporate at the time, in marketing, and I went into a depression, didn't even realise I was in it. My boss turned around and he said, I'm really worried about you. You need to go and talk to somebody, there's something clearly not right. And so what I did was I then went into a state of awareness that, yeah, there is something not quite right. I've ticked all the boxes, I've done everything that was expected of me in education, in my career, everything. But still, I felt empty inside. There was something not right with my life, and I couldn't work it out. Because by that time I was 36, and I still couldn't work out what was wrong with me. What happened was I started asking some big questions, some meaningful questions at 36. I said, what's the meaning of life? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? And it made me go on a journey that I'm still on 21 years later. And that journey was a journey of finding myself. And because the church had ostracized me, I decided to look for a spiritual journey. And I went inside and started looking at finding out what happened to me, what was missing, because I couldn't work it out. I really did not know what was wrong with me. And so I went and trained with yogis. I trained with all sorts of people, very, very highly regarded people in the spiritual community. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious at that point. They were, yogis and people teaching spiritual practice, actually moving into the heart, meditation. So I trained in NLP, stress management, and then I eventually found a training in the chakras. So how the mind and body connects and what happens when there's an imbalance, so physical, emotional, mental symptoms. And it kind of gave me some substance to work through. I changed careers from corporate to stress management. And still, I kept looking and I kept going. And my then best friend, she turned around to me and she said, what are you looking for? You seem to be searching for something. What is it? Why do you search so much? And at that time, I kept saying, I'm looking for my master. I'm looking for my guru. And that was my line for many years. And she said, well, what is it you think you're missing? What is it that you haven't got? I said, I don't know. I just need to kind of keep going. And there was always another training, another course, another thing for me to go and look at. And in 2018, the day before my baby brother's birthday, his 50th birthday, my baby brother passed away with a massive heart attack. And because of all the work that I'd done, I was very emotional. I actually grieved. I really did grieve. I remember screaming when my mum told me. It was such a shock because it was my baby brother, and you don't kind of expect that, when you're a sibling, you don't expect your baby sibling to pass away. It's very difficult. There's no words that can comprehend that experience. And my mum, she was totally beside herself because, she said you don't expect to be burying her son. And the family had some challenges, and we still do, because it isn't easy. But what it does do is it makes you realise we're only here for a short time and there's a mortality. And I remember saying, well, I got a lot to do, I better get on with it. And in 2016, I had made a decision to play my part in creating world peace. So that gave me a stage, and I landed up speaking on stage and working with promoters, and it gave me a whole new lease of the way that I was going to work. And I was reaching more people and changing more lives, and I landed up with clients from war-torn countries, and still I felt kind of like I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. I need to, we have to create world peace. This is right. We have to do this. But I felt like I was still playing a really small game. And then on the day of my brother's funeral, we talked about the date being the 11th of September. And on the morning at 11 o'clock, I realised it was 9/11. It was kind of something that just came into my awareness. It was 9/11. And I says, oh my gosh. And I remember saying to my middle brother, it's, do you realise it's 9/11? And he said, yes. He said, that came to me this morning. And I said, well, that's it. I need to step up and do more, because I'm not doing enough. I've decided to create world peace, to do things, but I'm not doing enough. I said, I'm going to allow myself 3 months to grieve, because that's important. And then I'm going to find some organisations and some people I can work with and do things with, because I've realised I can't do this on my own, and I need to join an organisation, find a tribe, find people that have the same kind of things that I'm thinking. And so on the 28th of December 2018, I did a little bit of research on Eventbrite, and UPF came up. And I thought, well, I read the description and what they were doing, and I thought, that sounds about right. Sounds like it's a good organisation to go and have a meeting with and get myself aligned with. So I went to my first meeting, their first one in January. And I felt like I felt that day in church, that I felt like at home. But at that time I didn't know they had all that background. I just felt home, another family. And I felt like there was something that gelled. And at that point I didn't know what it was, but there was something that felt good and felt right. And it worked somehow. And I was invited to by Margaret, lovely lady, Margaret Alley, to share my story on my first meeting. So I stood up and I shared what had happened in my family and why I sought out coming to a meeting. And therein lies that instead of the questions that I normally got, I was really well received. And that was something extraordinary, because there were questions when I told people what I wanted to do previously, but nobody questioned me. Everybody was really welcoming. And I thought, gosh, this is a bit different. This feels good. This feels wonderful. And I really quite like this. And I felt at home. And I said, I feel like I found a family, people that kind of get me. And those are my words, people that get me. Because I've wandered around in life with people that never really got me. And they always said, I lived in Caroline world, and maybe I have done for most of my life. Lots of my friends have said, I live in a rosy pink bubble, and life isn't quite like that. But actually, I've had a really good life. I've been looked after, and I now really feel that I've had angels in my life all the way through that have looked after me, that have guided me. Now, I continued going to meetings at UPF, and in April I was invited, in 2019, I was invited to the annual gathering. I didn't know what it was, I didn't know how to prepare for it, I didn't know what to expect. I was just told it was a picnic at Cleve House, and there was a gathering. So I prepared for a picnic, a gathering. And there was this big tent, and there was all these people. There was people in a band, and there was singing, and I thought, wow, what's going on? And I sat in the tent, and then I saw more, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. And I thought, wow, so there's even more, and there was all these people. And I liked it a lot. And the more I've got to know, the more I liked it. And the more I felt that this is even more of a home and a family than I ever thought possible. And I remember mentioning to Matthew Hewish at one of the meetings, because he stood up for the first, I saw him for the first time in a formal way, because I'd spoken to him, in an informal way. I didn't realise how important he was. And he was a big minister. I didn't actually realise that, because I was just, being very sociable with him and normal with him. And then I realised he was this very top minister. And I kind of saw him in a different light. And he said, there's so much more. I said, well, the more I learn, the more I'm kind of thinking, wow, this is really feeling like it's good for me, like it's a place. And he said, there's so much more. And that's what's happened. I came to a service. Robin says, I think it's time you came to a service. so he invited me to a service, still not knowing what I was going to expect. And there was more, and there was singing, and there was nice songs and joyous songs, and there was prayer, not quite in the same way that I remembered it all that time ago when I was 5 to 15. It was different. It was joyous, and there was nobody judging me that I did something wrong. And it felt good. It felt really good. And in April, Robin Marsh started to train me in the divine principles of peace. And eventually, at some point, something started to trigger. And I actually felt uncomfortable when he said the word God, somehow, because it had been not in my life for a long time, even though I was a very good Christian and I was really, really practicing as a Christian, just not going to church. There was something a little uncomfortable. And slowly, I reunited with God and my faith and my love for God. So much so that it's very emotional for me, because I explored coming to a meeting to help create world peace. But I found God. That was unbelievable. That was such an amazing experience for me. Because what happened was I found the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. I found what was missing. And that's why I kept looking, because I didn't know what I was really looking for. And it kind of came when I was ready. But in the mentoring sessions with Robin and with Dr. David Hanna, Reverend David Hanna, he's been instrumental in taking me through the teachings. 40 kept coming up. It took me a little while. I think it was about 3 weeks. And Robin clocked it. And I said, 40. I said, well, I'm 55 now. Well, that's been 40 years. It's taken me 40 years to get here. And he says, have you just realised? Because he kept saying 40. And eventually, after 3 weeks of Divine Principles of Peace mentoring, I heard it. I said, 40. That's 40 years since I left the church. And my response was, OMG. Oh my gosh, that's 40 years. And the significance of 40, I'm going to put my glasses on because there's some things that I want to read that I found, and I want to make sure that I get those specifics correct. So, the meaning of numbers, the number 40. You may be familiar with the importance of the number 40 in the Bible. I'd kind of long forgotten and not been studying the Bible for many years. So in my research, I found that it was quoted 159 times across the Old and New Testaments. God flooded the earth for 40 days and nights. Moses fasted for 40 days and nights. Moses fasted for 40 days and Jesus wandered the wilderness for, 40 days. During Moses' life, he lived 40 years in Egypt and 40 years in the desert before God selected him to lead his people out of slavery. Overall, it's a number associated with testing and the hardships one must endure to become more spiritually aware. And when I found out that, I kind of laughed a little bit because I thought, do you know what, you got me. You really tested me to the brink. You really, really did, because you got me hook, line and sinker. I was on this journey for 40 years. So in conclusion, whatever the number 40 portrays or symbolizes in the Bible, the purpose of testing is to humble us and to show us how strong or weak our faith is. God doesn't test our faith so that he will know, but so that we will know. Let me say that again. God doesn't test our faith so that he will know. It's so that we will know. That was very powerful for me. We'll have times of trials, tests, sufferings. We may be wandering in a spiritual wilderness for a time, like I was, but different to Moses, but the same kind of wilderness. But rest is coming. The true rest is found when we place our trust in Jesus Christ. And you know, that feels so humbling to be here saying that now. What I also want to share with you is I had some favourite hymns and psalms. And one of my favourite psalms is "The Lord is my shepherd." Who else has that as a favourite? I used to love that psalm. And I'm going to read verses 1 and 6 because it's meaningful for what happened in my life. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul and guides my path in righteousness for his name's sake. This is my life. And the analysis I've come up with is God is taking care of my needs. He's taken care of me when I left the church. He took care of my journey. Verse 6, surely goodness and loving kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. And here I am standing here. The analysis for verse 6 is when I get to the end of my journey. I want to be able to look behind me and see goodness and mercy in people's lives. And that is actually how I have lived. And I chose to support Buddhism for a lot of my years in spiritual practice, because Buddhism is kind of a way of Christian living. It's all the practices of Christianity. And people told me that they thought that I was a Buddhist even before I realised that I was. But really it's just living your life in the Christian values. And finally, I don't know how long I've been here. I've just been in a stream of consciousness, so forgive me if I've overrun. But there's one final thing I want to share with you, and I had a favourite song. There are many songs that I loved. This is one that always used to reduce me to tears. Abide with me. And I'm going to read you the first verse. This hymn is a prayer for God to remain present throughout life, through trials, through death. A prayer for the strength we need to be joyful. Your daily prayer. The more we surrender to God, the stronger we become. Abide with me. Fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens. Lord, abide with me. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. I feel it's taken me 40 years to get here. It's almost like this is my true calling. Being here today, I want to thank my baby brother, because it's because of him that I took this journey in this last few years. I want to thank all the people, everyone that has brought me to this place today. And most of all, I want to thank God for guiding me through my life and always being with me. Aji.